Hey guys, welcome back to the How I Do It channel. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different that I haven't done in the past. About 3 months ago, I was contacted by the company Polymaker along with some other YouTubers and content creators via Twitter. And they asked us if we would be interested in testing and reviewing their new line of filament called the Polylite PLA. The Polylite PLA showed up at my door, unfortunately, the day before I went on vacation, so I didn't get much time to do anything with it prior to vacation. So when I got home, I had done a few small test prints for things around the house and just some odds and ends. And then we had the New York Maker Faire. When we went to New York Maker Faire, I was surprised to see that Polymaker was at New York Maker Faire. So I got to talking to the guys and I asked them, I said, what is the advantages to the Polylite filament over other filaments that they sell? And the gentleman that I talked to said simply enough, the Polylite PLA is their budget-friendly, easy to print with PLA. And from the little bit of experience that I had with it prior to Maker Faire, I had to agree. It's easy to print with. It printed really well for me prior to Maker Faire. So when we got home from Maker Faire, I finally got the time to be able to focus in on the filament and do some more prints with it. The timing was about perfect. Matter Hackers, another filament manufacturer, released their mascot model, filament. Now, it might seem a little bit funny to use a filament manufacturer's mascot to review another filament, but their model puts the filament and the printers to a test. It's sort of a stress test for your printer. So I printed one, and this is not the original. This is the second one that I printed. But at 100% scale, I printed the first one at 195 degrees Celsius, which is the recommended low-end temperature from Polymaker. On my Folgertech console, I had a lot of under extrusion issues, and the print came out looking more like a sponge than an astronaut. And I decided to reprint and use my standard go-to settings for PLA. I printed at 210 degrees Celsius, 0.2 millimeter layer height, and a 2 perimeter wall. Now, I did print this filament from the bottom of his shoes up to right about here is printed at 0% infill. And from here up to the top was printed at 20% infill. And I did that because just experience in 3D printing, I knew I'd get a better, cleaner top if I printed with some kind of support underneath of it. So he printed really well. The parts, the tops of his boots, the top of his backpack, where there was no infill underneath, they did get a few small holes in it, but nothing that can't be easily repaired in post-processing if you were to paint this or something like that. And it's really, the holes are almost small enough that it's something that people probably wouldn't notice if they're not familiar with 3D printing. Once I had a successful filament, I then decided to scale him up, and I printed him at 200%. At 200%, I knew I had to make some changes because the bridging on top of his boots was going to be a little bit steeper. And on top of his backpack was also going to be a little bit more bridging there. I knew that with those I needed to do some kind of support. So what I did is from the bottom of his boots to the top of his boots, I did the 20% infill. From right about here on his backpack to the top of the backpack, I did 20% infill. And from right about here on his helmet to the top, I did 20% infill. Everything else has 0% infill, and I did that using Simplify 3D and the multiple processes to save some time, save some filament. It's really neat to be able to use those multiple processes in Simplify 3D to do those kinds of things. Otherwise, he was 2 perimeters, 0.2 layer, again 210 degrees Celsius, and he was printed at 90 millimeters per second. This one took, I believe it was 4 hours. This one took 2 hours. So again, it printed really well. I didn't have the holes on the top of the backpack like I did with the smaller model. The top of the helmet printed clean. The top of the boots, there's some like really tiny holes. It definitely wouldn't hold water. But I mean, it printed really well considering the amount of bridging that it had to do. Once I did this, once I had a successful print on the console, a successful 200% print, I decided that I wanted to compare the filament to another go-to filament that I use, which is inland PLA. So what I did is I loaded up the Polylite PLA on my PowerSpec Ultra, which is a FlashForge Dreamer inside of a FlashForge Creator shell. And I loaded up the inland PLA on my Wanhao DI3, DI3 Plus. And you might be wondering, well, how are you going to compare print quality from two different printers using two different filaments? What I did is I printed 2 pieces, one on each printer. Then the other 3 pieces, I actually took and swapped the filaments. So now the PowerSpec Ultra had the inland PLA on it, and the Wanhao had the Polylite PLA on it. The results were very similar, sticking with the filaments. It didn't matter which printer I printed on, the prints came out the same quality, and the differences between the 2 filaments were the same no matter which printer they were printed on. So again, I did the 0.2 millimeter layers. I believe it was 3 perimeters and 10% infill. I did drop my temperature back down to 195 degrees on those prints. So here, the first print, part of the print that I'll show you is done on both of these 2 that I'm going to show you are done on the Wanhao. The first part is the inland PLA in white. The second one is the top of the helmet, which the 2 would go together like this. And again, they're not put together because I'm going to do a lot of post-processing on this. I'm going to paint it. I still have a little bit of sanding to do to clean it up for post-processing. But the differences I wanted to show you, on the inland PLA, you can see it's a brighter white. It's a glossy white. The Polylite is not really less of a white. It's a matte white. So it doesn't shine as much. And that may help because the inland PLA, you can really see the layer lines. You can see them, you can feel them, they're definitely there. The Polylite PLA does not have the amount of layer lines visible or feelable as the inland, which is great. For somebody who's doing 3D printed props and they're going to be painting the final product, everybody knows you got to sand, you got to prime it, you got to sand it some more, you got to prime it some more, you got to sand it some more, and it sometimes seems like it's an endless process. With the inland PLA, I'm definitely going to have to do a lot of priming, a lot of sanding, and a lot of post-processing work in order to get this down to the point that it's smooth enough for what I want. With the Polylite, because the layer lines are so well hidden, it's not going to take me near as long to post-process this. I probably will do this in maybe 1 or 2 coat, probably 1 coat of primer, sand it, and prime it again. And that probably will be it. Except for this part here, which I'll get into in a little bit. I do have to do a little bit more post-processing here to clean up this glue. But just a comparison, I'm going to scratch this up close to my mic so you can hear the inland versus the Polylite. Here's the inland. Here's the Polylite. It's nowhere near as rough. Now, the inland PLA was printed just like you see it here. The Polylite was printed just like this. So they were both printed in the vertical position. One of the biggest things about this is normally a print that's only about 1/4 of an inch thick like this one is, I would usually use a brim of like 10 layers or 10 perimeters connecting up to this, sort of like a skirt. Except on this one, I did not use any kind of brim. I used a skirt that sat 5 millimeters away, 2 perimeters to purge the nozzle prior to printing so that the filament was in the nozzle and ready to go. Normally, with a print this skinny and this long, I would get some kind of lifting from the bed, no matter what kind of bed adhesion that I used. I'd get a little bit usually, without using the brim. On this one, I decided to take the chance and I printed it with no brim. And it printed completely flat. it didn't lift in the slightest, which is, again, for something like a multi-piece helmet, not having any lifting off the bed, any warping, is great. It's less work that you have to do later on when you're fitting all these pieces together. Now, back to the glue here on the top. The only problem that I did have with this print, and again, it wasn't Polymaker's fault, it wasn't a quality issue with their filament. At some point through the printing process, my y-axis shifted. I don't know why. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think something might have either bumped the bed or caught the cable or something that it didn't move. But the top part had recovered. It shifted back and continued to print, and it was just barely hanging on by like a strand of filament. But it printed successfully. It printed really well, considering it was printing almost completely in midair and it almost wasn't attached to anything. Now, I wasn't home to be able to see it, or I would have hopefully been able to catch it. But my biggest worry about that was great, now I've got to reprint this again. When I took this off of the bed, this part actually fell off. It was that loose that it just broke off from me breaking it free from the bed. And I took it and I looked at it and I thought, well, it looks really smooth on the bottom of it. So I dry fit it to the top of the helmet and it fit almost perfect. There's a little bit of a gap over here on this side that didn't print right. And that's it. So as you can see, I glued it back on and I'm just gonna sand down the CA glue and I should be ready for primer. So with that said, with the quality of this, I would highly recommend that you check out this filament, and I will definitely be considering this filament in the future when it comes to printing my Star Wars helmets and the droid heads that I'm working on, because of how well this prints. Now again, as a disclaimer, I was sent 1 kilogram from Polymaker, and that was the only contributions that they gave me towards this review. They did not pay me in any way. They did supply the spool in order to get a review. That review that you've just seen is my honest opinion. I definitely would recommend you check out this filament if you're looking for something of quality and at a decent price. You can currently purchase this filament on Amazon for $25. Now that compared to their PLA Plus, their PLA Plus costs $35 for the solid colors and $39.99 for the translucent colors. I did see prior to recording the video that Polymaker does show on their website a Polylite ABS and a Polylite PET-G. Now the PET-G does not look like it was available at the time of this recording, but that it will be in the very near future. I am very interested to check out both of those. I do print with ABS occasionally, depending on the parts, and I've been printing more and more with PET-G. If you guys do decide to pick up a spool, I will put a link down in the description below to Amazon where you can purchase it. That will be an affiliate link of mine through Amazon. Again, that's not in any way associated with Polymaker, but if you want to support the channel, you want to see more, I definitely would appreciate you using the affiliate link. I will also down in the description post a link to all my social media so you can follow me more if you'd like to. On Instagram, I'm Matthew Flinchball. On Twitter, I'm @CountryCowboy. And I'm also on the Facebook 3D printing groups and a few of the printer specific groups. You can catch me there. If you guys do decide to buy a spool after watching my review, definitely let me know in the comments what you think of it, if you like it, if it works well for you, or if it doesn't work well for you. I'd like to know what you guys think of it as well. And if you have pictures of your prints, be sure to share them on Twitter and on Facebook, and I'll be sure to see them when you share them. If you like this video, if you want to see more of the reviews from me, hopefully this won't be the only one. Hit the like button before you jump off to the other links. If you want to see more from the channel and you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. If you are subscribed and you want to get notifications when I release new content, make sure that you click on the bell. If you guys are already subscribed to the channel, I want to thank you for being a subscriber and continuing to support the channel. Thanks guys, I'm Matt, and this is how I do it.